Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm running a little bit late here, but I'm pretty excited to share with you guys a little bit of the work that we've been doing on the infinite knowledge machine, thinking particularly about Ethereum as a distributed compute service for immutable truth on public blockchains, and how this really is powered by our ability to think about science, think about semantics, and how we can build autonomous protocols that curate knowledge in the real world. And then I'll introduce some things to you guys like decentralized science, which has been an ongoing topic in this space over the past year, about a year old. So a little bit about me. My name is Shady, co-founder at Holonym. It's a zero-knowledge identity protocol for taking off-chain proofs and putting them on-chain. And so I'm running a little bit late, so I'm going to give you guys the blitz version of this talk. And really briefly, I'll be talking a little bit about the steward mandate that calls upon us all in this Web3 space, thinking about public goods. I'll talk specifically about Ethereum as a knowledge machine, or rather that Ethereum really exists purely in a way to curate and accumulate knowledge, and that this is a really important concept to keep in mind as we engineer technology within the space. I'll point to the importance of DAOs as a way of mediating the interactions between autonomous agents and humans, and being able to maintain alignment between AI's autonomous protocols, and being able to service the needs of people as they evolve and change over time. I think really key to that is a concept that we take from the scientific method, generally thinking about discovery as a recursive loop, right? So meaning that progress usually looks not like progress for a while before we actually find a major breakthrough that Kuhn kind of coined as term as a paradigm shift. You might have heard that term before in philosophy of science. And I'll give an example specifically about discovery of oxygen, and how oxygen was kind of this mind-blowing thing that seemed to nobody knew about it. And lastly, I'll talk a little bit about some DeSci primitives. So I'm going to speed talk through this. I think we're all here because we think that's Ethereum offers an opportunity to uplift and elevate public goods, very much like this conference, right? However, when we're thinking about immutability, when we're thinking about incentive alignment, the permanence of the decisions that we make is really significant. So it's really important for us to kind of keep in mind how we shepherd resources to the infinite machine in a way that best services the interests of society and those values that we care about. So, just a brief history on Ethereum. When it was first released, the Frontier update, it was that major unlock for people that were programming technology, working with building tech, building next generation applications from the internet, moving away from Web 2 systems, was this record of shared truth, or this shared state. So this ability to perform distributed computes and consensus around the results of those computation. And this empowered a bunch of technologies like DeFi apps, which kind of blew up in volume there after one of the first major killer use cases of Ethereum. And DAOs really kind of emerging after that as a way to coordinate and organize around these shared systems and shared outcome, shared group, goal-directed group behavior. So yeah, so I think really what we're seeing is Ethereum kind of moving as a way of taking things that we know to be true about the world and putting them on chain in a way so that we can all coordinate and move somewhere together. I think it's really important to keep in mind too this multi-chain future, that where we're all moving, sometimes it's not together, sometimes it's independently, and this multi-chain future that we're seeing over the next couple of years that's beginning to emerge is going to be really critical for that. On the back end, right, I think where we're really moving over the next year or so, or next couple of years or so, is this full automation of thinking about putting the A in DAOs, right? Most DAOs right now really couldn't be described as autonomous. So having agents, I think, that are able to take off-chain actions, right, such as like plant a tree and then update an on-chain record and be able to incentivize positive behavior in that way. So I'm running super late here. Basically, what I wanted to point your guys' attention to is this idea of decentralized science. So just about a year ago here at ETH Denver, we put on the first decentralized science conference, where really taking a lot of these ideas from Web3, from DeFi, from distributed systems architectures, and thinking about how can we seed resources, how can we seed different community nucleation points so folks can go out, accumulate knowledge, and use a shared record record of truth to be able to communicate what it is that they're seeing in the world in their experiments, and being able to drive funding, being able to drive coordination around those efforts. So some really key properties of DeSci protocols is some of the same stuff that we kind of see actually for most apps, whether they're in DeFi or whether they're in community building or whether they're in some alternative use case. And it's really key. So, I think what's really key here is this being able to execute any sort of deterministic code on these distributed consensus networks. And so this really empowers knowledge creation as this automated process or as an engineered process, thinking less of knowledge as something I think about, in my basement of my lab, and I go up to the laboratory and then I do some experiments manually, but moving more towards a future of automation where we can start effectively exploring a wider parameter space and automating that, and humans become custodians of these agents. So really key to this are going to be linked and verified identifiers for verified content, and this is something that we're seeing starting to merge with technology like IPFS, which uses CIDs, for example, to directly address data by its content, what it's made out of, and I think really important too is thinking about how ZK systems are allowing us to verify proof of computation on certain things. So being able to prove that you've achieved a certain series of steps to produce an outcome or produce an observation or a conclusion. And when you have all these things coming together, then you can start thinking about systems that allow us to engineer specific outcomes that we care about. So for example, if we have the outstanding problem of discovering whether dark energy or dark matter is going to influence the direction of the evolution of the universe, and we need to decide what kind of telescopes we should put out there. Should we put up one big giant James Webb telescope? Should we put out a bunch of smaller telescopes and make a synthetic aperture telescope so we can look at multiple parts of the sky at the same time and offer that resource to more people? There's pros and cons to each of those. And so, with these decentralized protocols like Gitcoin, for example, I think quadratic funding is just the tip of the iceberg. And once you do have this linking between an ontology specifically for thinking about hypothesis generation, experimentation, sharing results on chain using the shared record of truth, then we can start putting together algorithms that allocate funding in different ways that optimize for these different behaviors. And I think this is really important for avoiding the emergence of this immutable dogma. So lastly, I think once we are able to prove out autonomous protocols or engineered processes for distributing goods to maybe balance the pros and cons for the impact of a particular say, science project or hypothesis or group behavior towards trying to tackle a key challenge, this really opens up some opportunities to think about how economic engineering on the back end can be used to further drive people to work in that field, or to transform the value, for example, of all the data that the James Webb Telescope is producing into things that benefit society, and that could be used to fund science moving forward. And that's just really the tip of the iceberg. So I encourage you guys to definitely go check out denver.desci.community. It's a rough overview of all the DeSci events that have happened these past couple days. I think we had about four days of content. And we've had folks from all over the space that have never heard about Web3 before, all coming together, really attracted by the promise of being able to start on a fresh page, and thinking about how we can use some of these Web3 tools in science today to transform funding, to transform how scientists think about collaboration, and really interestingly, I think starting to curate a permanent shared record of protocols, of ideas, of processes in science. So do check us out. I also want to show my project as well. So I'm co-founder of Holonym. It's a zero-knowledge identity protocol. And we're really excited about science, and my background as a scientist kind of led me to this point, because it allows, ZK allows us to do things that we couldn't do before, which is we can finally allow researchers to choose to be either completely public about how they share their results or their data. Sometimes they can't be public, right? Maybe perhaps they're working with PHI, perhaps they're working on a project that they don't want to get scooped on, although that's not always something that I would, sometimes I think there's really no danger of being scooped. You guys should just work out in the open. But this is a real concern in cases where multiple groups are all converging to the same idea, but they can't share the results in public either because they don't want to contaminate each other's results. Like, for example, the picture of the first black hole, all those teams worked out in privacy. So I think ZK is really important. If you guys want to check out Holonym, I can give you guys a demo after this talk. We built out this demonstrator application of what's moving away from the language of DAOs and thinking more about societies, because scientists don't know what DAOs are, and they're not going to take the time to look at that on Wikipedia, but they know what professional scientific societies are. And this is a great way, I think, to onboard researchers into the space. You can take a look at this, and how we're basically leveraging Protocol Labs' HyperCert protocol to bring scientists in, verify things about their identity, such as whether they have a Ph.D., whether they have an open science framework account, and being able to import that reputation off-chain, on-chain in a privacy-preserving manner, and minting hyper-certificate NFTs that allow funding based off of some impact criteria. So definitely check this out. Here's some examples. Oh, I'm not even I'm not even changing my slides. It's so early. Anyway, that's it for me. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. And thanks for taking a seat, actually. I saw a couple of you guys wander in at the last minute, so thanks.